Let's do some weed. I mean, do the weed. She was living in a single room with 300 individuals. One was a man, and the other two were females. And Lord only knows what they were up to in there, Susan. And furthermore, I wouldn't be the least bit surprised to learn that all 4 of them habitually smoked marijuana cigarettes, reefers, and then I play Smoke 2 Joints by Sublime. That, by the way, was my rendition of the scene from Reefer Madness, the actual name of the movie that came out in the 1950s, I want to believe. Reefer Madness. That was used to start the Smoke 2 Joints song by Sublime. Because, you know, smoke 2 joints in the morning, I smoke 2 joints at night, I smoke 2 joints in the afternoon, everything alright. I smoke 2 joints in time of peace, 2 in time of war. I smoke 2 joints before I smoke 2 joints, and then I smoke 2 more. That's a lot of joints, don't you think? Yeah. Also, please don't take that out of context. Like, clip this. This is what Dr. Swan said. He smokes a lot of joints. No. No, I don't. Alright, let's talk about cannabis. Let's first, however, compare how cannabis is, I want to say, compared to the another legal drug that we talked about on Monday, alcohol. And this is a clip from about 10, maybe more, a little bit, about 10 years ago, on The Daily Show. So that's Jon Stewart. So listen to that. Let me go ahead and pause Pretzel here so we can listen to Johnny Boy Stewart, J Stew. All right. So, yeah. Alcohol? Cannabis. My hands are real big. All right. So that was from, I think, 2013 when Colorado legalized recreational cannabis, and states then followed thereafter. I'll tell you, I have stats on what that is. The deal is with that coming up here in just a second. So, it is the most popular recreational drug worldwide. The most popular recreational drug, right? So that's from 2015, and so that number has only grown. So it's actually far more popular than actually alcohol and tobacco. What? And this number is actually much bigger these days. Much bigger these days than 2014. But in 2014, U.S. adults, about 50% supported legalization. That number is above 60% now. Okay. It in the United States, it is allowed as medicine in 33 states, so 33 out of 50. It is recreationally legal in 11 states and the District of Columbia. They really should be using it in the federal buildings, but it's still federally illegal. So dumb. I mean, how much better would Congress be if they were all just, you know, a little light in the head, right? Yeah. So cannabis comes from what has been traditionally called the hemp plant. So if we were to look at what the genus and species are that we're talking about that contain the most THC, okay, tetrahydrocannabinol. It's a hard word to say. And other cannabinoids. We're talking about cannabis sativa, cannabis indica are the two, like, really big ones, okay? And there's also cannabis ruderalis, But that one doesn't really get used all that much. It gets put into some hybrid plants, but the two main ones are Cannabis sativa and Cannabis indica. Okay, and you may be familiar with the terms sativa and indica. Okay, those are strains or subspecies of the hemp plant. Okay, now when you hear the word hemp, like hemp farmers or a hemp rope or hemp clothes made out of hemp, hemp is non-active THC strains of the same kind of family of plants. And so the stalks, leaves, and the shoots and leaves are pretty durable fiber, and which is why farmers farm it to make fiber items like t-shirts, pants, ropes, bags, all of that stuff. And so you'll see like, oh, this shirt was made with hemp. It's actually cheaper to put together, to loom, than cotton, because I don't know if you know this, but cotton is extremely difficult to pick. And you have to separate the cotton from all of the prickly stuff that the cotton grows in, so you have to separate that. So it's actually really expensive to loom and make stuff out of cotton. We have machines that do this these days, but hemp is actually cheaper to do if it were to be done on the same massive scale as cotton. Okay. And one other really strong point that I wanted to make out, this is what it looks like, in case you are not familiar with cannabis. Okay. This is a picture of Cannabis sativa, and the way you can tell is by the shape of the leaves. So, and how tall the stalks grow, but the shape of the leaves. So we're talking about a hemp plant that has this shape leaf, okay? And so, it's anywhere from 7 to 8 leaves, but in this pattern, okay? And they all grow in this pattern. The long, thin ones typically are sativa. Skinny, short, fat ones are typically indica. And then ruderalis is somewhere in between, I think, something like that. So the image that you see quite frequently associated with cannabis is sativa right here, okay? And so the last point that I wanted to make about cannabis is that it's actually not as addictive as many other drugs. It's definitely not as addictive as alcohol. It's definitely not as addictive as some of the other Schedule 1 drugs, like cocaine, methamphetamine, other barbiturates and things like that, ketamine, etc., etc. It is certainly not as addictive. And the interesting thing is, the class of drugs that this is in, hallucinogens and psychedelics, are actually not that addictive as a class of drugs. So if you were to compare depressants to stimulants to psychedelics/hallucinogens, the hallucinogens group is not as addictive as the other two, stimulants and depressants, and drugs within those two categories. So it's not as addictive, and that's probably one of the main reasons for its resurgence into the popular spotlight. Here are the states in blue, and this was updated recently. States in blue are, and then of course DC, which you can kind of see right here. DC is blue. That's all. Those are all the legal states. So all of those crazy fools on the West Coast, even Alaska, it's legal recreationally. What? So here we go. Green states. Green states are, I believe. Oh, what did I say? Did I write that down? Green states is legal medically, and I can't remember what the difference in green was. I think there are more restrictions in the light green states. States that are these states here, these gray ones, it's 100% still illegal to have any. Oh, the D also means decriminalized. So in Missouri, for example, it has a quite big medical use footprint, and it's also decriminalized, which means if you don't have a medical card and are caught in possession, then you aren't going to be taken to jail like you used to. Okay, so decriminalized means that it's no longer a drug offense to be in possession. You might actually get a misdemeanor, which means you probably have to pay a fine, but you won't go to jail like you used to have to go to jail, you know. So that's it. And you can see here that in 2015, for legalization, 53, again, that number has been on a, if we extrapolate this graph and this trajectory, it's actually above 60% these days, okay? It's decriminalized in Washington, Slayer-Darth, because it's blue, so it's legal recreationally, so it's decriminalized there. So any state with blue, it's recreationally legal, and also decriminalized because of its legality recreationally. So those two, the decriminalization is subsumed within the recreational use law. Yeah, and you can see then that the against legalization is on a sharp decline, and they're about equal in about 2013 or so, when Colorado became the first state to legalize cannabis use. So Colorado's the first. Okay, voter referendum, they voted for it, it passed with a majority, right? So the debate over legalization is quite a, I forgot that I don't have any music going. There we go. So we have the idea of medical cannabis. So there is some research that suggests that cannabis has health effects. Jury's still out on this, though. Jury's still out on this. There is quite a bit of research that suggests, yes, these drugs are helpful. And there are some THC-based drugs, as you can see on the slide, that have gotten FDA approval, okay, FDA approval here in the United States to treat certain illnesses. So I'll talk about those in just a second. But then, of course, the debate is like, okay, we use this drug for its medical purposes, but what about the public health effects, right? Got to kind of bridge that. But then you're like, well, wait. There are no real medical uses for alcohol, and there are no real medical uses for nicotine, and yet those drugs are legal, and they have numerous negative public health effects. Why are we having this debate about cannabis? Okay, why are we having this debate about THC and CBD when there is some research to suggest there is some medical use for THC? And so that's the debate that we're currently having. That's the debate that many states are currently having. And then whether or not the United States makes a decision federally, then, you know, that'll change the way that states approach this problem. We'll see. I bet this is going to be a debate for a really long time, decades, I would imagine. But I would like to see the United States make a decision about this going forward. Anyways, so there are some THC drugs out there. Dronabinol and Nabilone were approved by the FDA. So Dronabinol, which is, you might have seen Marinol and Syndros, okay? Those are trade names. So that's THC, a specific form of THC, is used as an appetite stimulant, okay? It's also an antiemetic, right? So it'll prevent you from throwing up. It'll reduce nausea. So it stimulates your appetite. It prevents you from vomiting or reduces your nausea. And it can actually reduce sleep apnea. Okay? Severe sleep apnea. It's not like you can walk in with intermittent sleep apnea and be like, yo, can I take this dronabinol? It also is used to treat HIV/AIDS-induced anorexia and chemotherapy-induced nausea and vomiting. So those are the only things you can actually get it for. So if you're under chemo, so we saw in 50 First Dates that they were either ingesting edibles or they were smoking, especially those two older guys. It's probably because they were medically approved to do so, but they don't need to take dronabinol to actually do that, at least in the nature of the thing. And then nabilone, Sesamet, is synthetic, which is pretty cool. It's an antiemetic and analgesic for neuropathic pain. So it was approved to treat nausea. Again, for people who are undergoing chemotherapy. And then it has been used to treat fibromyalgia. So if you know anybody with sensation, over-sensation of pain, fibromyalgia, okay? So that's the use primarily for, that's what we use for medical reasons. And then there are plenty of other things, right? You may have heard of CBD being used to treat epilepsy. CBD is a calming, an anti-anxiolytic, so it can be used as an anti-anxiety drug. Okay. So the debate then is for legalization, not as addictive as alcohol, tobacco, and opioids. That's primarily the main argument, right? The second argument appeals to other people's sensibilities. Like, I don't care about the drug itself, but what can we do to increase revenue? And I gotta tell you, it's a revenue moneymaker. Alcohol doesn't really have many taxes associated with it, although smoking does. Okay, smoking cigarettes does, and other tobacco products. They have excise taxes. Other names for that would be like sin taxes, right? A sin tax, because it's a sin to do these things, according to the separation of church and state. Those against legalization, okay, argue about some of the negative medical effects. So one of the things that cannabis does do is reduce the amount of CB1 brain receptors, and that's important because this is a pain relief receptor. Okay, it's a pain relief receptor, and so if that is getting reduced from daily use, then that's actually going to have negative health impacts on your life moving forward. And then, of course, the dangers of THC, which to many people on this side of the debate is the devil. THC and its hallucinogenic effects is the devil. Okay? It's sin in disguise. It's a gateway drug. It's going to make you do cocaine. It's going to have you do meth. You're going to do heroin. Because you do that. If you have too much THC, it could actually induce a psychotic break. Could actually increase your anxiety. It can make you paranoid. Okay? And so if you have too much CBD, okay? Too much CBD, or excuse me, THC. I don't know why I said CBD. Too much CBD. Too much THC could lead to prolonged psychotic episodes. So the inducement of schizophrenia. We're talking like high percentages of it. Okay. Yeah. Slayer Darth. Yeah. Appetite, memory, and mood and stuff. It's receptor for serotonin. All right. So federally, the drug is a Schedule 1 controlled substance. Okay. Specifically THC. So federally, it is still illegal if you are caught with it. This is bad news bears. You don't want to be caught by a DEA agent. Okay. And so this is the this stuff is the definition for what Schedule 1 means, right? So the first reason it's called a Schedule 1 is because it is said to have a high potential for abuse. Okay. Second, it has no currently accepted medical use in treatment in the United States. Obviously, that's wrong, right? As you just talked about, 2 federally approved drugs that have THC in them. One, which is organic THC, and one, which is synthetic THC. Okay. And then 3, the lack of accepted safety for use of the drug or substance under medical supervision, right? So yeah, this applies to things like cocaine. This applies to things like heroin, fentanyl, that sort of thing. Methamphetamine. But I've already shown you that there's no reason it should be Schedule 1 because it has medical use. Accepted medical use in the United States. So that doesn't make any sense, right? So since most of us are in Illinois, since the school is in Illinois, let's talk about cannabis use in Illinois, the most recent state to approve it for recreational use. Okay. Illinois is number 1 for one cool reason, is it was enacted through legislation rather than a public vote/referendum. So every other state that has allowed legalization, including the district, and so every other state and then DC, have all enacted it through votes. I mean, technically legislation is enacted through votes, but not by the people, of course. This was a proxy. This was a proxy vote by our representatives. So it was approved. It's called the Illinois Cannabis Regulation Tax Act. Okay. And what came of this was, of course, the legalization of cannabis use by adults 21 and over. But it also included the decriminalization and the expungement of 700,000 cannabis-related convictions. And many of these people were in prison for those, basically possession offenses, okay? And 11,000 of those people were pardoned for basically low-level drug offenses. Logan, that's awesome. That's awesome. Good to hear. I'm glad. That's pretty cool. That's really cool. So the details of the use. So once you are 21, you can go to a dispensary. And so some of you are turning 21 this spring. I'm not going to suggest. Go have a drink. See the cultural thing, right? Cultural and societal norms surrounding these two. It's interesting. It's quite interesting. Anyways, if you're 21, okay, 21 or older, just like in the state of Illinois, alcohol and tobacco products, because Tobacco 21 law, I think was passed last year, or went into effect last year, something like that. And so you can have 30 grams, or which is approximately an ounce, of what is called flower. That's the bud you hear about. So, you know, if we go back to the frogs in The Daily Show, that is the bud. Smoke. Bud. So that's the flower. That's the bud that actually starts forming from the female plant. Okay? The female plant. By the way, the most sexually frustrated female plant, I would imagine, because people just cultivate females. Because that's the plant that flowers. So, sexually frustrated cannabis plants is what you would smoke. So that's the flower, okay? Right now in the in Illinois, the only people who can really buy flower because of supply are medical patients. So medical patients get first dibs on flower because it's the most potent, because it comes directly from the plant, hasn't been processed in any way into a concentrate or into an oil or anything like that. So most potent. So right now, flower is pretty much for medical use only until supply catches up to demand. Okay. You can have 5 grams of concentrate, so you'll have a percentage associated with THC and CBD in the concentrate. Generally speaking, people are paying attention to the THC content. You can have 500 milligrams total THC in edibles or other tinctures like oil or lotion or things that can like get absorbed in your skin or whatever. Most of the supply these days is surrounding edibles, so things that you ingest that have THC infused in them, and like so things like chocolate, gummies, brownies, cookies, other things like that. Things that are generally pleasant to eat, right? Things that are thought of as treats, okay? And then if you are a visitor to Illinois, so if you are a resident of another state, like our neighbors, Wisconsin, Indiana, Missouri, Iowa, Tennessee, and Kentucky. Wait, Kentucky? No, not Tennessee, but Kentucky. Sorry. Can have half these amounts. I mean, the Illinois State Police really isn't going to like pull you over unless you're breaking some sort of road law. And then if you have like your weed out, like, where are you from? I'm from Indiana. Oh yeah? How much do you have? Like, this is essentially circumstantial. If you get more than you're supposed to, if you're from out of state, well then, drive the speed limit, use your blinkers, stop at stoplights and stop signs, and you'll be fine. The restriction is quite a bit more restrictive for use versus smoking tobacco products, using tobacco products, and alcohol. Is pretty much only private home or residences. You can use, if allowed to, at dispensaries. It's up to the dispensary, of course, and whether or not they share space with other businesses. Okay. And the DUI limit, so we talked about blood alcohol content. The DUI limit in Illinois is more than 5 nanograms per milliliter of blood. So this is your THCBC. Okay. So 5 nanograms per milliliter of blood. So THC and other cannabinoids, THC and other cannabinoids are fat soluble, so they're actually going to stick around your bloodstream for a while. Okay, so if you get drug tested in Illinois and there are either the employer has put in place about cannabis use, or you work for a federal agency and you get drug tested, then cannabis will stick around in your blood for a long time. It's not like alcohol where a day and it's gone, okay? Or nicotine and it's gone, okay? No, Braden, you are a resident of Illinois, you need to know them, but for the quiz, no. Don't be silly. That's silly. And so this value here, this 5 nanograms or more, tests are being developed. Basically a breathalyzer for THC. Basically a breathalyzer for THC is being developed to be as accurate as a alcohol breathalyzer. You don't need to screenshot this. The slides are available on Brightspace, y'all. You don't need to screenshot it. You can see this forever. You can see this for eternity if you download it and never delete it. Eternity. Perpetuity. You can come back and just, like, stare at it. This is what I need. Oh. Yeah. Okay. Fair enough. Fair enough. Now, the other argument for legalization, right, that Governor Pritzker made, and, it passed through the Democratic-controlled legislature, of course, is it the revenue generator that it's essentially made out to be? Well, if it's heavily taxed, then yes, it's going to be a revenue generator, just like any taxes are revenue generators. And so these are the taxes that were applied to Illinois. Okay, so 35% or less THC in the flower, then you get 10%. Okay, anything more than that is 25%. Anything more than that is 25%. Anything that's not flower is 20% taxed. Okay, and cultivators to dispensaries. So dispensaries are charged a 7% tax to get the product from cultivators. Is likely going to be passed on to consumers. I read a couple of news articles where the 7% tax was talked about, and they interviewed some people. Like NewMed is a big Chicago. They have one in Urbana and then East Peoria dispensary. They're like, yeah, we're passing that on to our customers. So, they don't have to because it's a tax from one place to another, but they do. So, so heavily taxed stuff. Oops. Plus, local governments are taxing purchases too. So, since most of us are around, well, maybe not most of us around here, but since the school is around in Woodford County is around two of the bigger counties in the area, Tazewell and Peoria County. I thought I'd talk about them. I couldn't find any. Well, I'm sure I could find information about McLean, but McLean doesn't have a dispensary now. McLean County doesn't have a dispensary right now, so this point is moot. But Peoria and Tazewell counties charge the maximum 3.75% as provided by the law, so that's 3.25% additional on top of these taxes. So you could consider that these taxes here are like your excise tax, your sin tax. These are sales taxes, but also county level taxes. You still get charged an additional set of sales taxes, so whatever the sales tax is for the county. So you're talking like 20 to 50% tax. Well, maybe not 50%. 20 to 40% tax total, okay? And then the cities can charge up to 3%. And so East Peoria and Peoria, where there are a pair of dispensaries, 3% in addition. So if you go to Trinity Compassionate Care Center in Peoria, okay, Peoria County and Peoria City will charge you 3% plus 3.75%, so that's 6.75%. City of Peoria sales tax, I believe, is 9%, somewhere around there. So that's 15.75%, right? And then depending on what you buy, can be, let's say you get a chocolate bar, right? So that's 20%. That's 35.75% tax. Right? Wow. That's a lot of money. And I have the figures for January. I'm not entirely sure what February and March say, because I made this last month, and so there really wasn't any news stories about revenue for February. But $3.2 million in sales on January 1st, which is the largest first day of legalization ever in any of the 11 states and DC. Okay? Just massive amount of money. Okay? $3.2 million of people, like, people went that day and were like, blah! Take my money! Right? 40 million in sales for the entire month. 40 million in sales for the entire month. The number is astounding. Number is insane. Okay? It's a lot. That's a lot of money. So this is what happens to you when you take cannabis. You get red eyes, decreased intraocular pressure, which is why it's been used as a pain reliever for glaucoma, because glaucoma increases the pressure in your eyes, which is painful. And so because cannabis reduces that pressure around your eyes, in your eyes, then that's pain relief. So glaucoma, and that is an acceptable medical use for cannabis, of course. Dry mouth. You can feel hot, you can feel cold, and so those sensations are increased. Heart rate does increase, especially if you take sativa. Okay, and muscles are relaxed. Okay, generally speaking, what physical sensations are happening in your body. It also is going to and so now the brain stuff, if we talk about the brain stuff, it's going to change your mood. Okay, generally speaking, mood is lifted for sativa, and mood is sort of leveled for indica. These are seriously broad ideas about what changes mood. Okay, but none of them depress your mood. None of them make you feel sadder. Okay, time perception expands. Okay, things seem slower. Okay, sensations, in addition to hot and cold, also increase throughout your body depending on what you do. Okay, right? Oh, Braden, yeah. So, discomfort and paranoia would be issues surrounding high THC content. So, if you wanted to get back into it, which that's obviously up to you, but maybe increase the amount of CBD that you have and reduce the amount of THC that you have, because they are actually inverse of each other. If there's a lot of THC, then there's going to be a little bit of CBD. If there's more CBD, then there's going to be less THC. They're inverses of each other. Okay. As I mentioned, reduction of CB1 brain receptors in daily users, right? So that's one of the big things for chronic users, is that this receptor does tend to disappear over time. Okay. Impaired thinking, impaired problem solving, impaired memory. Of course, the memory thing is the one that gets focused on quite a bit as a cognitive issue. Okay. And sort of negatively associated with that. Language is also, people have a difficult time producing speech. Okay. Yes, federal agency, Border Patrol. Good job. Yes. So that's THC. Cannabidiol, CBD, the unregulated one. So it's not fully legal. This is super muddy. It's somewhat unregulated. Okay, if it's been extracted from hemp. So the CBD that you get. So the CBD that you get, like at Family Video, at Marco's Pizza, whatever. They're like, your CBD store, or any sort of CBD oils or lotions or whatever, has probably been extracted from hemp, which has a higher CBD concentration, and it's less than 0.3% THC. So that's how people get around the lack of regulation about CBD, and that's why you see it for sale. it is still technically part of Schedule 1. Okay. Still technically part of Schedule 1. Okay. And it seems to have an opioid like effect, so it's a very calming substance. Okay. And it alleviates the effects of THC. And so if you want a blend, you would go for a hybrid that has basically equal amounts THC, CBD, and you feel calm and euphoric, essentially, is what a blend would do if you have them at equal levels. Okay. However, as far as the pain relief, calming, anti-anxiolytic effect, the science is still out on that, much like the alcohol that goes back and forth, about whether alcohol is healthy or not. The science is a bit out, but there is anecdotal evidence for people who use medically and it's the only thing that gives them relief, right? So you'll hear about people who are going through chemotherapy and they have, extreme nausea from chemotherapy, and they say any other antiemetic drugs to reduce the nausea doesn't work. But if they take a few hits from a vape pen, or they smoke a joint or something like that, take a bong rip, makes them feel better. That's the only thing that reduces the nausea. Like I said, it's being used to treat epilepsy. Okay, small number of cases though on success, but for some people, they say, like there was a couple of years ago, there was like in 50-50, there were a couple of years ago, there was a mother and a father who were fighting to keep custody of their kid because the only thing that would prevent his epilepsy and his seizures was smoking weed. And he's like, no, they're not endangering my life. Luckily, they won and they got to keep custody, and the court granted the ability for this, minor to get a medical marijuana, medical cannabis card, so he can continue using it to treat his epilepsy because it's the only thing that was working. And so you have a ton of anecdotal evidence for both the good effects of THC and CBD. Now, again, everything in moderation, right? Everything in moderation. Some additional effects of THC in the brain, okay? And where the change occurs, okay? Where the change occurs. So you can look through that slide. I'm going to go ahead and finish up here because we are just about done. I'm going to skip this one. Now, I can't play this for you. I cannot play this for you. But what I suggest is, if you have Netflix, is to go watch Weed Explained, the Vox Explained series. It's from there we go. Having a little bit of issue there. Sorry, I stuttered a little bit. It's from 2019. I think is it from last year, or is it from 2018? Shoot, I don't remember when my friends got married. Oh no, that's so bad. In any case, I definitely recommend it. It's a really straightforward and really helpful episode in understanding more about weed, but I can't play it because I would have played it for you if we were in class, but I can't play it because it's not at all legal. If you don't have a Netflix subscription, I'm not going to test you on the content in it, but if you don't have a Netflix subscription, I would suggest, I think they have a trial, so maybe do a trial, or don't worry about it. Like, it's not 100% crucial. It's just something that I thought would be cool to watch. And it's narrated by Kevin Smith. If you're not familiar with Kevin Smith, he is Silent Bob of Jay and Silent Bob, and he was a prolific cannabis smoker. I think maybe still is. I don't know. So, yeah, that's Cannabis. I would have wanted to spend a lot more time with this, of course. I was gonna get cannabis goggles, by the way. I was gonna get cannabis goggles, and we were gonna do the cart that OSL got to do the outside demonstrations, but those were canceled because of weather, and then they were canceled because of, and then any other use of it was canceled because of coronavirus. So, yeah. Eventually, I'll be able to get to use the cart and have people try to drive the cart with CBD goggles on. So that would be fun. But I think this episode of Vox Explained is so good. It's so good. Anyways, that is this class. So yeah. Hey, we won't chat again until Friday of next week. So have a really good Easter, everyone.